Yeah, to kick things off, I do start with the same boring ass question every time. Simple introduction, guys. Who are you? And just a little background on yourselves.
My name's Phil. I'm singing for FLOYA for the past 3 years now, and I've been in the industry for about 11 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Marvin and I play guitar for FLOYA.
Yeah, dope. So for people that aren't familiar with you guys, which at this point it's weird because like for me and my preferred genres and stuff, like you guys are such a standout talent. And I'm not saying that just to blow smoke up your ass or anything. Like I think that you guys have done this thing really well of like kind of melding a few different genres together and creating this unique soundscape. But for people that aren't familiar with you, how would you go about describing the easiest way to get into listening to you, or your preferred market space, if you will?
First of all, thank you so much for the compliment. We really appreciate that. It's nice to feel understood. And yeah, it's kind of the thing, when Marvin and I first sat down and got together, we were talking back and forth about what we wanted to do, like artistically, because if we were to start a new project, it has to be something that we are both fully committed to, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of creative vision. And obviously, it hasn't been there from the start, just from the get-go. But the more we, compared tabs and ideas, we knew that we wanted to fuse two different worlds and try to bring two audiences together that usually wouldn't meet. I mean, to speak about big names, I mean, Linkin Park kind of did something in that vein. They brought together a rap slash hip hop audience with a rock slash metal audience.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously have a strong rock and heavier music background, but I personally, for example, I've been growing up with art pop basically, so
Okay.
mainly
Yeah.
that, and also like in the past 5 years, fell incredibly in love with electronic music. And usually, without any disrespect, usually like rock bands and metal bands, if they use electronic elements, it's not really a pillar of their sound,
Mm-hmm.
but instead it's something that flows on top, basically. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not really part of the overall structure of the whole building,
Mm-hmm.
but instead like something up above. And we're trying to equally have two pillars, that rock side and that EDM slash electronic side. And depending on the song and the idea, um, basically choosing what of those pillars is up front and which is maybe a little more laid back. Sometimes it ends up being 50-50,
Yeah.
so that was really interesting because I haven't dabbled too much with electronic music before, so it was like a child on a on a very, very deep discovery.
Yeah.
And I think it has been the same for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason why we decided for that is that we decided to be a duo and just a
Mm-hmm.
duo. I mean, we have a live and a session drummer and on stage and in the studio, of course. But because we're still addicted to real drums, because they just, yeah,
Yeah.
bring the power that electronic music. It's a, it's the same power, of course, but it's different way, in our
Yeah.
opinion. The energy is different, especially on stage.
Especially if you can see it, visually, having a drummer
Yeah.
on stage is
Sure, sure.
so different to just having electronic drums coming out of a speaker. It's just a medium for
Yes.
for energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
I think it
reason,
adds a element of emotion to it because you can see how
mhm,
passionately
exactly.
they play.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you
Absolutely.
look at the Chainsmokers, they also have a live drummer, like
Mm-hmm.
Matt McGuire, who adds so much value to the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And yeah, these kind of things all inspired us by the decision to go as a duo and have the freedom of using like all kinds of instruments, elements that we just want to, compared to being back in a band. I mean, I've been in a band with five other people. So of course you always, when you wrote a song, you always had to find something for everyone. And it
Right.
was a bit restricting in that way because you always had a bass, you had two guitars, and you always needed something to, yeah,
Yeah.
have
To bridge
everyone.
them everything together for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And
Yeah.
these were the main reasons and inspirations that why we
Yeah.
decided to go for this.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. And something you said, Phil, that really hit me is, you said no disrespect to any of the artists that are using like the electronic, but it does kind of feel like they write a rock song and then just, oh, what can we fit over the top of it? whereas you guys are a lot more intentional about how do we build these together so that they're flowing together and that they make cohesive sense.
And sometimes, you know, once we try to establish that, trying to create a homogeneous mixture of those two things that can be contrary at times, sometimes it works better than other times, obviously. So it's not
Yeah.
always very, very easy. But you know, the question that you asked first, like about where do we see ourselves in a market position, I think that's a really interesting question, because we're actually still figuring that out. Because, you know, simple example, if every time we released a new song, we also used the platform Submit Hub. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And you know, the people in charge of electronic music playlists, they told us like, nah, it's too heavy. And the people in charge of rock playlists told us, nah, it's too soft. So you're kind of falling in
Too much
between chairs.
electronic, they said. Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. And so that led to the fact that we fell through a lot, you know, because people didn't know where to place us. And to this day,
They
it's
still don't know.
difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of the blessing and the curse, right? You're trying something that isn't done too much, at least. But then the positioning, who are you going to tour with? You know, which festival should you apply to? It's all a big mystery. So we're just trying everything.
Yeah, well, and I think that's exactly it. You know, I think a lot of the genre barriers have come down over the last, especially like through the pandemic, right? Like everybody started experimenting. I think the problem is, to your point, nobody knows what the hell any of it is yet. So we can't say, oh, they fit over here, because over here doesn't exist yet. You're kind of on this pioneering edge of what this next genre generation is going to be. I'm lucky enough that I found out about you guys way back when, I say way back when you released the hymn, and from that moment on, it's been, you know, I've played you guys for several friends. You end up on my playlists all the time for like workout playlists, things like that.
So cool.
Because I think it's this really beautiful melding of these genres, and I think there's, you know, again, bragging on you a little bit, Phil, here with your vocals laying over the top of this, there is some sort of almost like a juxtaposition of like, why is it such a clean, pretty vocal over this type of soundscape? Or, you know, it just almost, it's right on the edge of, does this fit? And it does so beautifully.
Thank you so much. Like, honestly, you know, something that motivated me to keep going as a singer in my bands and in this band is that I discovered for myself that I could hit those really high and harsh notes, right? They deliver a lot of emotion. And you know, usually if you were to look at FLOYA and the concept of it, like being that mixture of rock and EDM, and usually if you hear something like that, it's all very polished and completely clean vocals, like instead of like something raspy or something more aggressive that might deliver a little bit more emotion. At least to us, it's all subjective, right? But we would never shy away from using that, you know, because we love the emotion that almost screaming can deliver. So that's really, really important to never lose that edge. We're never gonna go full synth pop because we like that rough edge.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, especially in the US anyway, the alternative music scene is becoming more and more popular. So those harsh vocals are becoming more of a mainstream staple. Not that pop's ever going to go away, right? Like
No.
it's the music for the masses for a reason. However, I think it's really important that you guys, you know, what you're saying so far without saying it is that you're staying authentic to yourselves and true to what you guys believe this music should be, and not allowing the industry, in a sense, to dictate like, nope, you either need to commit to one side or the other.
I mean, sometimes, you know, if we were like a standard, like what is standard, right? But a classical metalcore combo, for example, you'd exactly know which booking agency to talk to, which festivals to apply, like which bands to tour with. As I said, it's difficult, but this is the most interesting approach to us, you know, what keeps us motivated and trying to I don't want to say pioneer because that's a really big term, you know,
Right.
and with all respect to all the artists out there trying something new, it's difficult to do something entirely new, right?
Yeah.
But we're trying to push what alternative music can be. And you know, it doesn't go without the fair share of, oh my God, is this too clean? Does it work? How do we get that edge in there? Or the other way around. So it's a new challenge every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, again, with genres kind of dissolving over the last couple years, like there is obviously a lot of space for you guys where you would fit, but it's still trying to figure out like and getting the buy-in from others of, hey, we would fit on this tour package because we can do both.
Mm.
But I think there's still that reluctance a lot of times where people go, well, but we really need just to match the style, the energy, whatever.
You know, like a really childlike pipe dream of mine is like to be the first like alternative rock slash EDM band on something like Tomorrowland. You know,
Yeah.
something like this is not possible as of right now, but maybe someday. You know, because those audiences are just cross-pollinating so much in recent years. You know,
Hmm.
it's especially apparent. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's that song with Delenium, right? And the Spirit Box singer.
Spirit Box,
Yes.
Appreciator.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yes.
they did something there too. Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is kind of like the thing, you know, you can see Elenium pretty much definitely on Tomorrowland. Um, and if he plays that song, I'm really curious to see how that audience will accept it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's a really good example for anyone, you know, listening that isn't familiar with you guys. If they've heard of Linium, there's some crossover to what style you guys are doing. Maybe not quite as much drum and bass as what he does on certain songs, but
True.
you know, it definitely has those similar enough elements that if you're an Millennium fan, Floya is a band to check out because we kind of fit that mold.
It's very cool that you're saying that because it's you know we can't deny that he is an inspiration in what he does, you know, as much as, for example, in that side of the spectrum the Chainsmokers are, like, right,
Yeah.
because they could be that, you know, two people EDM duo, but they instead go for a live drummer who delivers that energy, you know, and Elenium could just collaborate with, you know, any singer in the world, but he chooses to go that harsh way sometimes to deliver something else of the spectrum. And you know, it's just too limiting in a from a personal and business perspective to just would choose one shade of music, right?
Hmm.
So that's probably what we think about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about you've got the new album getting ready to drop, the debut album getting ready to drop. You're out on a Rising Empire. Talk about, you know, they're one of those labels that over the last 2 or 3 years are really getting on people's radar. What was it like when you had those conversations, looked at the roster and went, is this real? You know, like, are we really about to join this?
You want to go?
Yeah, the good thing about it is that my previous band, Alaska, has already been on the Rising Empire. So
Hmm.
yeah, we knew each other. And when we started this project, we first wanted to go the DIY way, just yeah, self-releasing everything. And yeah, we were lucky enough that they sent over a mail, and yeah, we were in the last preparations of releasing the first single by ourselves, and then
Yeah.
stopped everything, and yeah, luckily went with them. And of course, yeah, it's an honor. I mean, it wasn't that easy at first to decide for them, and we honestly already talked about it,
Yeah.
because of the genre that they mainly present. But yeah, they were
Yeah.
the ones saying, okay, but we want something different,
They want to
and we
branch
will
out, yeah.
try to yeah market it properly. So
I was really worried at first because obviously they're great people, great to work with, but like the audience that they have, like they have a big audience, but like if you're a band like we are, like in the style of music, you can probably like scratch out half their audience that are gonna
Right.
be turned off by us, right? And I really didn't know what to anticipate at first, but honestly, so far we're getting so much love by their audience. So we are really privileged to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I that's a great point. You know, looking at the roster, you guys are kind of, for lack of a better term, the sore thumb, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're not really the same mold as everybody else here, but I think it is cool that, you know, a label like them is looking at this alternative space to branch out more. But it also goes to speak a lot about their trust in your creativity and your vision for the project.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're very thankful for their trust, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Drift. This was a little bit different song for you guys. Um, you kind of mentioned in the press release that I got about how, Phil, you were kind of struggling with like an ambivalence towards what music meant to you anymore, or kind of the passion, not necessarily fading, just struggling to hold on to it, right? What was it like going through that? And then, you know, kind of where was that light switch or that moment that was, okay, this is how I need to address this?
That's such a big question. Let me try to find the perfect explanation for that as much as I'm capable. So imagine this: I'm 2 years old. My dad places me in front of a video recorder and plays me Peter Gabriel's Secret World, a live concert from 1993. And that was the coolest thing I've seen in my life thus far. Obviously, I haven't seen
Right.
much, but it continued to stay like that for me, you know, through the years. Like the first exposure that I had to his keyboard, to my dad's keyboard, and then he bought me a guitar, and you know, that experience that I had as a very young child never left me alone, so to speak. It was still the coolest thing ever, and I couldn't even imagine doing something else with my life and my career than doing music. Like, but it's just, you know, the business is not a secret. It's tough. It's very, very tough. And if you're from the outside looking in, before you actually, you know people, have connections, have
Mhm.
bandmates that have experience and all that, you're from the outside looking in and you're asking yourself, how is this going to work? You know, because my parents, for example, my family as a whole, there are no musicians in my family. And once I said, Mom, Dad, I want to do music for a living, they were like, that doesn't work, you
Right.
know,
That's
because
not a thing.
they themselves, you know, they didn't have a clue. They thought like, okay, there are either people who make millions off of music, and there are people sleeping under a bridge because they fail. What people tend to forget is the middle ground. You know, there are so many people
Yeah.
working in the industry that aren't rich or poor. They just make a decent living, you know, and obviously I'll take the millions. I can't
Right.
have them, but you know, I'm just happy if it meets somewhere in the middle. And when I look back on being in Time the Valiator, we had very big aspirations, and I was probably the only one in that formation that had been touring before, and then doing the first tour and being kind of not unprepared but underprepared, so to speak.
Hmm.
That taught us an important lesson. We were under a lot of stress, and you know, trying to like get from these kind of studio musicians that we were to live musicians, and you know, we really had to grow into that role. And it's been difficult. Everybody wanted something different, and I didn't really know what I wanted, because deadlines make everything a little bit more. It can suck the fun out of stuff if you're not
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it strongly depends on your mindset. And in retrospect, I'd have to say that none of us in that band had the best mindset to work in this industry, and wanted different things. Like it's very different for me now, because with Marv, it's just, you know, we're seeing eye to eye. We want the same thing out of our careers, out of this band. And you know, once I feel overwhelmed or too stressed, you know, we're not factories, right? If you have
Right.
to create something, it sometimes it just doesn't work by the push of a button. And while that gets to me sometimes, Marv has his ways to, you know, calm me down and provide perspective, because he's just a more chill dude than I am. I get stressed very easily, and he has that calm demeanor that's really helpful. So when Time the Valiator disbanded, and well, they didn't disband, I left the band. Um, I was so fed up with all of it that I didn't know if I wanted to return. And that's basically what drift is about. You know, I felt like I was missing a part of my personality now. I just shed it. And like 2 years in that break from my career, I was just like, who am I even? Like, what do I want to do? Like, I was working in a dead end job that I wasn't happy with, and yeah, that's basically it. I knew that it was calling me back,
Right.
you know, but I didn't know how or if I really wanted to until I discovered that it can be the source of so much happiness, but you tackle it right, you know, like have the right mindset to tackle it. It's still work, but it's also passion, and those two
Mm-hmm.
things need to be balanced out.
Yeah. And something that you touched on there that I think is really important, and I've talked about it with other artists, is the importance of having the right people around you or beside you. You mentioned you were kind of the only one that had toured and experienced certain things, which can be a benefit. It can be a hindrance as well, because they don't know what to expect, or they expect more out of you because you've done this.
Right.
But then you also praised Marv here a little bit about how he's able to kind of recenter you a little bit with, hey, it's like chill, it's fine, like we're going to go this route and we'll do this thing, or let's take a break from it. And I think when you have those factors, especially in a project as condensed as this, um, it is really beneficial, because it kind of gives you that perspective that it doesn't have to be perfect on the first try.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm still to this day I'm learning from Mark because he's got so much more experience, like even touring than I have. Like I've done probably 3 tours. You've done like I don't know how many.
Many.
But he's happy to share his experiences, and he used to work under a lot of pressure. And when it comes to balancing things out like mentally, I still learn from him every day. So it's just a fact.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, just a really cool thing where you're able to kind of recognize that in yourself, right? And here's where my quote unquote downfalls are, but this is how Marv can fill in and help, fill those gaps or whatever it may be. So let's talk about Lights Out. You guys just dropped that. We're recording this on Sunday. That just came out this last week. Um, Talk a little bit about kind of the the push that you're making. I think is really interesting. A lot of bands tend to um slow play their album release, currently is the game plan for a lot of bands. And you guys are like just hammering out the singles like, look, this is what we're doing. We want to be in your face. We want you to pay attention. So talk a little bit about the song, but also talk about this release strategy leading into the album.
Oh, where to start? I
Right.
mean, what's important to say is that that Lights Out was the first song we ever wrote together when we've been to Norway on a trip together with our producer Chris, to just get to know each other and see how things work or if they
Yeah.
work. And yeah, Lights Out was the track that we first recorded then, but then honestly pushed a bit back because we felt like, okay, this is the first song. It sounds like the roots where we come from. I mean, it's obviously the most, it's the darkest song and maybe even the heaviest.
I'd say that's true.
And we weren't sure if that's the identity that we wanted to, that's the vision we share for FLOYA. So we
Mm-hmm.
pushed it back, started with Wonders and tracks that, yeah, if you know most of the tracks now, you can tell that that's the other direction where we try to turn more to. And yeah, it's been fun to finally put it out and to put it out at all because we weren't sure if we want to do it. And in the end, we're very happy that we decided to bring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
That
ahead, Phil.
song actually marks a really interesting turning point for me, like when it comes to my work ethic, because I had that situation a couple years back with my dad where I sat down with him and we listened back to back to the Time of Valiota album, and he was just having the booklet in his hands, like reading along to the songs, and at the end of it he was like, "Son, do we need to talk?" And that's when I realized that this album contained a lot of depressing shit,
Mm-hmm.
and that I had this style of writing that was really really dark sometimes, and maybe for my family a little bit worrying. And once we started FLOYA and Marv's playing, and the ideas that we had were so much more uplifting. So Lights Out was the first song that I wrote lyrics to, and I wanted to write something uplifting, but I failed. I mean, uh, failed is in the eye of the viewer, obviously, or the listener, because I still think it's a great track, even if it has some darker lyrics than what I usually write for FLOYA. But I was trying so hard, and at some point I was just like, fuck it, I can't do it as of right now. I We then wrote Wonders, and I tried changing my approach, and that was like an eye opener because it worked, and it actually changed a lot of who I am creatively, but also who I am like as a person today,
Yeah.
because I opened myself up to much more positive and uplifting topics, instead of, focusing on the things that I struggle with in my everyday life, you know. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to, conceal these entirely in our music, but I think it's so important. I learned that really late in my 30s, that there's so much reason to think about things that don't work. Um, but in the end, it sucks the energy out of you, and it makes
Yeah.
you a person that, you know, sometimes can be hard to get along with. And there's still so much good because we're like privileged, obviously, right? We have a roof over our head, we have food whenever we want, we have jobs, we have this career. Yeah, focusing on the positive stuff helps me in every way possible.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's really cool to hear you say that, because I think, one of the things that maybe gets lost a lot, especially in this hybrid genre, if you will, uh, is kind of the understanding from a casual listener, if you will, um, that these songs aren't just engineered, right? Like there's still substance to these songs. It's not this puzzle piece that we're just building a picture. There's still something here. And I think, especially with the EDM side, that misconception for a very long time was just, oh, they're just putting words over the sounds because it sounds cool. And it's like, no, there's so much more depth to it. And I think it's really cool that you're open and honest about, like, this is something I've struggled with. This is where my mind tends to go, but I'm intentionally trying to shift my perspective.
Absolutely, and sometimes you're so close to the actual product that you're working on that you tend to lose perspective. Sometimes I'm just like glued in front of my screen, and I'm like, is this cool? Is this something that we could do? And then Marv tags along and he's like, do you like it? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, you should know. you know
Yeah.
so that's kind of that happens too. So yeah, it's really really important to step away and see, will it make me feel something if I took this on stage and perform it, or doesn't it do anything for me? And
Yeah.
gaining the space to decide on that, that's really important, I feel.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I'm going to mess up the quote, so I'll paraphrase it. But I just saw a thing where Rick Rubin was, doing more and more interviews now. And there was a conversation that he was having kind of along that line of, it doesn't matter what the listener thinks. At the end of the day, it does. But like, you're making the art for yourself. If you don't love what you're doing, don't do it and don't put it out. And it's kind of what, you're alluding to, that Marv's given you, is like this: if you're not sure about it, then don't commit to it. Like, you have to love what you're doing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because our producer Chris, he's like quoting Rick Rubin to us like probably every week, like once with a new quote. And actually, I bought Marvin a copy for Christmas of Rick Rubin's book, because
Uh-huh.
what he says holds a lot of truth to it. And if you examine his career, he's a really interesting guy, right?
Yeah.
He's like completely transparent about, do you play any instruments? Nope. Have you any technical ability? No.
Yeah.
And still, he managed to put out some of the most spectacular albums of all time. So he's a big inspiration when it comes to all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing with him is, you know, I think he's got this unique ability. His superpower, if you will, is unlocking the talent and potential in others. And he's just kind of the conduit that helps pass it through.
And that's such an important role, you know, because I remember an interview that I was quoting from in the thing that I said last, and that interviewer was just like, well, if you don't have any technical ability and you can't play any instruments, what's your value? What are people paying you for? And like the psychological level of communicating with musicians in the studio, it's like, okay, I'm gonna press record and you feel everything you've ever felt and put it into that track. It's not how it works. You
Right.
have to, you know, bounce, you know, feelings, conversations, and ideas off of each other with your producer in the room to get yourself to that level. Right. That's basically why the golden rule, the first hour in the studio is always dog shit. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, you know, that the interviewer would ask Rick Rubin, like, what's your value after this man has changed the musical landscape? Like, he's made millions upon millions of dollars and made other people make millions upon millions of dollars. And you're questioning what value he brings to the industry.
But probably just because he didn't know what he's actually doing.
Right, right.
It's somewhat fair, you know, if you're not in the process with him. But after everything that he said, I think he's just a great person to have in the room, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So while we're on the topic of producers, let's talk about Chris a little bit, right? You guys have been partnered with Chris for a while now, and just really being able to have kind of that third man in the group, to a sense of like understanding the project, helping you guys along as far as unlocking sounds, things like that. What's that relationship been like, and kind of the development throughout?
We know Chris for, I don't know, 10, 11 years. For me, I think it
Probably.
must be over 10 years.
It's at least been a decade.
Because he's always been producing our previous bands before. So
Yeah.
we never thought about doing this with somebody else. And as mentioned, yeah, he's been with us to Norway. He's been with us to Croatia. We often, once a year, we try to do some writing trip to just get out, seek for new inspiration, and come back with hopefully some new song ideas and stuff. And yeah, he's always, most of the time, whenever he has the time to, with us there. And yeah, it's just an amazing collaboration to have him as a secret member, more or less.
That's true.
Right.
Behind the scenes. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, he's got a, yeah, well, his personality traits are quite interesting because in this world of music, it's really easy to lose sight of things and to just try and put out as much as you can, get shit done as fast as possible, you know, and if you're not careful, you fall into that behavior of a machine, basically, you know, and a lot of passion um deteriorates from the process if you're not careful. And with Chris, it's just like everything he does, he puts so much passion and time into it. You know, sometimes perfect examples, actually. Marv and Chris were sitting in front of a computer in Croatia, and they were looking for a clap sample, you know, right, to have a hyped up part. And Marv was just like, yeah, let's just look it up on Splice and grab one and put it in, and that's it. And he was just like, no, I want to sample it, and then I'm going to EQ it and compress it and whatever the hell he does with it.
Right.
He wanted to create everything from the environment, basically, that we were in at that point. And while the clap from Splice did it in that case, he still has that ambition to all the time go the extra mile, and I think that's hard to find these days on the market of producers. You know, people try to finish as much as possible, as I said, and sometimes he doesn't really care about deadlines as long as the product is not there. It's not there yet, you know,
Right.
and that's great to work with. Even sometimes in the studio, if I have like a really dog shit day and I can't perform to my ability, he's like, oh, okay, you know what? We're not going to push this any farther. Come back tomorrow. We'll sort this out, you know, and he doesn't kill me for that. So that's quite nice.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, to your point, like, especially the way that the industry kind of exists currently, there's a lot of pressure even on the producers just to, like you said, kind of be part of the machine and be a factory to get stuff out. So it is cool to hear that like he takes the time to, yeah, I could put out this project, we could be done with it in 3 weeks, you know, whatever, like here's your album. Or we could take 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it's going to take, and make sure that this is the best thing for you, which in turn is going to benefit me, because then people are going to go, that was really fucking clean. Like, who did that? Oh, Chris helped us. So now my stock goes up as well.
Absolutely. You know what? And with almost every release, there are at least like 2, 3, 4, 5 comments about how clean his vocal mix is, or how clean the overall sound is, that it's very well produced without being overproduced. And if we wouldn't, you know, let him have that time with the songs, this kind of quality wouldn't make it into the songs.
No,
You
you'd be
know,
getting a preset just slapped over the top of what you've done.
but he wouldn't give that out to us, you know.
Right.
He would just say, "Shut up! I'm not done. I need more time. You're gonna get it when you're gonna get it." If we're not under like very, very strict deadlines.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really cool that, you know, you guys have been able to find someone that does fit the project and the mindset, and even just the family, if you will, outside of the project. Again, going back to what we said earlier about the importance of finding the right people to put around you, that's one of those roles that, sure, you could theoretically hire Rick Rubin to do your album, and it's probably going to be an amazing album. But if he doesn't understand the project, is it worth spending that money there?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And that's kind of the thing here, because Chris was there from, you know, the first hour basically, and we asked him in Norway on the first writing trip that we did if he wants to be on board with all of that, and he knew what kind of commitment he would enter that way, and he was like, "Let's fucking do it. I'm ready. I'm here for you guys." Still to this day, couldn't have done it without him. Absolute key person in this team.
Yeah, for sure. For you guys, as the album gets ready to drop on the 8th of March, kind of what's the view, right? Like, obviously you want to do shows and stuff like that. How's that working overseas right now with you guys in Germany, especially? Like, what's the music scene kind of feel like? Is it ready for these types of tours? Is it ready to accept a new band, if you will, and kind of help support you?
As we can tell so far, yes, of course. I mean, what's funny is when speaking to someone like you from the US, you instantly knew like our inspirations. Like you were the one talking about Delenium and stuff. Here in
Yeah.
Germany, of course, names like him aren't really a thing. Like I think he's been here on tour last year, and
Yeah, but
he
like
didn't
one
even
show.
play a German show. I think it was just Amsterdam and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, Netherlands are of course more used,
Right.
more familiar with like electronic music.
Yeah.
So I can't really tell from that, yeah, electronic side, but the network that we have so far, or like the fans we have, and the network with the Rising Empire and stuff, I think we're definitely welcome here, and we will try to get on a small headline run once the album's out. That's all still in the works right now.
Yeah.
We got a support tour coming up with Siamese from Denmark. And yeah, we're trying to jump on a few festivals and just get the album out, and as you mentioned, play shows and shows and shows as much as possible.
You know what's been interesting is like every time we walk on stage, it's like it's a new audience, because we've done a couple of support slots.
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, the support slot that we had for Thornhill and Hold an Absence.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what to expect of that one. You know, I didn't know if people would be into us or if they would be completely turned off by what we're trying to do. And a key moment in our set is always, you know, that build leading to the Willows drop.
Mm-hmm.
And if that hits and people are moving, they get what we're doing.
You're
And
right.
if they look at you confused as shit, then you know, oh my God, this is not working, and it's just cringing people out, which is fine, you know, because it's all subjective. But Yeah, it's always interesting. Like, for example, I felt like, when we played Prague, the audience wasn't so much into it, and like in Berlin, and for I think Italy as well, like Milan, that was great. There was
Yeah.
no barrier of musical styles that we could feel, at least, in terms of the audience's taste. So that's always interesting.
But I think we're not too far away from a band like Holding Absence. Like,
Right.
There are
I mean, of course, they decide for lots of different elements than we do, but there are definitely, in terms of the vibe, that the emotional vibe is definitely very close.
It's comparable, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Especially with their new album. I mean, I think that new album is kind of a reintroduction for a lot of their fan base to them. And then, the stage presence that those boys have is absolutely insane. Like they do not hold back at all. It's 100% the moment they step on stage.
Funny anecdote that I have to that. We played Hamburg. It was like the third or fourth show of the tour, and there was a big mezzanine that you could watch the set from, and it was closed off to the public audience. Right? It was just bands and people that were on bands guest lists and all that. And I was up on that mezzanine on a chair watching Hold an Absence play, and right beside me was Nick, the bass player in Thornhill, and we were like just having a beer and watching the Hold an Absence set, and all we talked about in between songs was just like, dude, how is he doing that? He's not from this world, dude. His like endurance and power level is it's really, really good. So I'm all for this success thing, because they are there, and I feel it very well deserved.
Yeah.
And obviously very, very nice guys. We were so stoked to tour with them.
Yeah. I saw them. They were doing the when Ohio is for Lovers festival. So the Hawthorne Heights put on their little festival, and just a whole mashup of bands. But I got to see them and photograph them. And I've got this photo of him doing this high kick, and his toes are above his head. And I'm like, bro, you're wearing skinny jeans and you still got your leg that high. Like, what is happening here?
That's a signature move.
Dude, he's so good at it. So yeah, kind of as we transition to the end here, obviously, we're touching on the tours and there's still a lot up in the air. If you guys were to pick kind of the dream situation, what would a dream tour package look like for you guys?
That's so hard.
It would be Coldplay, The Midnight, the band Camino, for me. These three, to not name too many, because
Like, the funny thing is, Marv told me about his first concert experience, like, ever. You were like, what, 12, 13 at the time, at the what was it called, the Revolution tour?
Project Revolution, yeah.
Oh shit, that lineup was fucking crazy. What was it?
Linkin Park, The Hymn, The Used, Pharrell
Yeah.
Williams with Nerd, The Bravery, and did I miss someone?
That's
And Linkin Park,
that's
obviously.
such a crossover tour, that it's a shame that that doesn't happen anymore. But under that banner, if something like that would be in style again, so to speak,
Yeah.
I would definitely pick a tour with Porter Robinson. I would also go for Coldplay because they're a big influence on us, and I feel like they stand for what is love in music, and that's so important. Their message is really, really important and still touches us. And number three, oh God, there are so many artists that I like. You know what? I'm gonna go with the secret one. There's an artist out there called Tennyson, and he's doing this really interesting electronic music that's very much jazz influence without being, convoluted.
Yeah.
His vibes are impeccable. So, really big fan. I hope you're doing a new album. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been a while since rock.
Yeah, awesome. It's funny you both bring up Coldplay, so I'm gonna ask. I enjoy Coldplay as well. They're kind of like a Nickelback situation, though. Like, why do people shit on Coldplay so much? Is it just because Chris Martin is like unapologetically him, or like for whatever reason, anytime Coldplay comes on, you have at least one or two guys in the room that are like, "Oh, fuck this, this is shit."
They just do it because it's mainstream.
Yeah.
I think that happens, you know, if a band's really good and they get the popularity like on a global scale, um, I think it's just bound to be shat on, you know, because
Yeah.
some people are like, oh my God, they're so good, and they are, right? But some other people are just gonna piss on them for the sake of it, I feel. You know, and you know, if they're not bulletproof, obviously, right? Chris
Right.
Martin is a great artist. I think his live singing ability is really good, but arguably there are voices out there that are just, you know, of a
Mhm.
much more intense quality. You
Yeah.
know, take for example the likes of what's what's he called? Blinding Lights? Who's that?
The weekend.
Oh yes, The
The
Weeknd.
Weekend. Yeah.
Damn it! How could I say that? For example, he has such a unique and also strong but also soft voice. Chris Martin couldn't do shit against that. But
Yeah.
that's not what it is about, right? And as soon as there is something that you could nitpick in a band, for example, like, "Hi, I'm Chris Martin and I sing in Coldplay," you know, people are bound to shit on that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is.
That's fair. That's fair. I think it is a lot of that too. Like Marv said, and Phil, you touched on it. Like at some point, it just became the cool thing to do. So everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon and shit on them. It's just I think there's some irony to it as well, where you've got former like day one fans that as they blew up, they're like, oh, they sold out. You didn't want your favorite band to get popular. That doesn't make any sort of sense.
That's a phenomenon that I never quite got, you know, because you're supporting a band from day one, and once they finally make it, you jump off the wagon and you're like, no, this is not for me anymore because it's not exclusive anymore. Maybe it's that.
Right.
I don't know what it is,
Yeah,
but
it's the feeling of you are the one who found the band when
yeah,
it was small.
it's your secret little thing, right? And especially like with you touched on the topic of Nickelback, Josh. Um, I think it's quite interesting. They have like 3 or 4 horrible tracks, but the rest of their discography is quite good.
It's
Like
Yeah.
heavy as fuck.
yes, and
Yeah.
songs like you know, or the album like "Feed the Machine." I checked that out a couple years back. This track on there that's called "Coin for the Ferryman," and that goes hard as shit,
Yeah.
and it's really good. The vocals are on point, so I don't know why people shit on them. I never got it.
Yeah.
Like, of course, yeah, "How You Remind Me" is like a little overplayed by now. But
Yeah.
like what they actually do on their albums, apart from these ballads and, you know, kind of pop songs, it's really fucking solid.
But I feel like these things are about to change nowadays, especially in times of TikTok and stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
Coldplay, for an example, since they've been on was it the last tour, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, the big arena tour, everybody, like hundreds of videos were swimming all over TikTok.
Yeah.
And they are going on tour here in Europe in summer, I think. And we all tried to get tickets.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly hard. And I feel like it's more or less also because of TikTok, because people are seeing it and they don't really have any attachment to the band. And they just
Yeah.
see, they just want to be part of it, you
Th-
know? It's good for the band, of course, but I
They
think
want to be
it's
part of that
yeah,
cool thing.
it's about to change that people are not shitting so much about things anymore. Like it's been like 5 or 10 years ago. Luckily,
Yeah.
It's funny that you're saying that because, you know, we listen to an artist from time to time called Anima.
Hmm.
He's that Italian dude that is kind of revolutionizing what techno can be right now. And I swear to God, I don't listen to him much, but I would instantly go to a concert because the vibe and the light show that he does is epic as shit.
Yeah.
So while not being really a studio work listener of his, I would in a heartbeat go to a concert. That's also an interesting
yeah,
realization.
sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up here, because I don't want to keep you or delay you from your next one, kind of take the last however long it takes you, a couple minutes or whatever, to tell people, where they can find you, best way to interact with you, and kind of what to expect through 2024 for the band.
I think of course the easiest one. Follow us on our socials to stay up to date for everything. Yeah, the debut album will be out on March 8th.
You can always shoot us a message if you want to talk or if you want to see us somewhere. We're always available in our DMs.
Yes. And yeah,
Awesome.
thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure.
It's been a great
Yeah.
talk. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. When Shane hit me up, the album was coming and everything, I was like, let's figure out some time. Like, I know it's going to be tough with the time difference, but I do appreciate you guys taking the time to do this, and I'm really looking
Likewise.
forward to it. I think, like I said, I've been pushing you guys onto my playlists as well as making friends listen. So hopefully it's right there at that cusp of breaking through the glass ceiling, if you will, and
Thank you so
the
much.
floodgates open. So
Dude, literally, with every supporter who's like, dude, you're so fucking underrated, and we're like, just talk to us about your friends. Every little bit helps, and because it's the sum of its parts, right? So thank you so much for pushing us to your friends and putting us on your playlist. That's highly appreciated, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We'll talk soon. We'll stay in touch for sure, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Bye bye.